Today we're taking a look at some of my favorite build locations on Genesis Part 1 in ARK Survival Ascended. Of course, it's a pretty big map, especially with the newly expanded ocean biome that offers a ton of build locations, and for most people this is probably where you end up with your main base, since it's the easiest way to also partake in all of the extra activities with the Tides of Fortune DLC, of course. And besides that, it also just offers the most amount of land where there is no mission zones at all. Hello there, survivors, welcome back to another video here on my channel. So today we'll be taking a look at some of my favorite build locations here on Genesis Part 1. Of course, we'll feature a bunch of them here in the ocean biome, but we'll also take a look at 5 build locations in each of the other locations. Of course, you're much more limited there, especially playing on servers, because if you're not allowed to build in the mission zones, there's not a lot of space left, but I've still tried to find 5 nice places to build a base or outpost in any of those other biomes. So it doesn't really matter if you're looking for a main base location or maybe some additional outposts, maybe for your magma sword breeding, etc. There will be plenty of locations to pick from. As always, if you enjoy seeing videos like this and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and of course feel free to leave your suggestions for the next build or maybe build location you would like to see me build in down in the comments below. Now, here in the ocean biome, there's of course a ton of different islands, and most of these islands are actually really good and would definitely serve as amazing base locations for your main base and of course your little harbor with your shipyard if you're doing the Tides of Fortune outposts. And this is one of my favorite islands here on the Genesis Ocean biome. This is an absolutely beautiful island with, I think, 2 very distinct but beautiful build location options. First of all, we've got the island itself, which is pretty cool. You've got one of these pre-built structures that you could totally integrate if you wanted to, but more importantly, you've got these beautiful waterfalls flowing down the island, and actually a pretty cool natural path kind of going up into the little mountain that you have on the top of this island, where there is a perfectly flat build space right at the top. So this is definitely a great option for your own build right here, kind of safely surrounded by these mountain tops, which is quite cool. And then if you go a little bit further, you even have your own little water pond axes, which of course lead to those awesome waterfalls flowing down. And if you're brave enough, you can of course utilize the peaks, build some things on there, and have some cool kind of like hanging bridges maybe between them for a really cool and unique base location. But especially this perfectly flat area in the middle of the mountains is of course a great option. If you want to build here, you can find it right over here on the map. So this beautiful island actually offers another really awesome base location, which is this beautiful cove down in the caves. And there's actually also some pre-built light installed here, which is really cool, but definitely just a very unique location that would make for a great pirate cove. There's 2 ways to get into it. You have one entrance right over here on the island itself, which you can find at these coordinates, which leads you into this nice passageway. You can already see the lanterns here, and then you get into the cave. Now, there is some hostile mob spawning here, so you would have to start building here to make sure to block this all out, or maybe bring some species plants or some turrets to make sure that you are safe. But you can see there's a decent amount of space here along the outside where you could be building. And of course, you could expand into the water itself, where you definitely have a decent amount of room. So you could be doing some water breeding in here as well. And then we have a big entry point here out into the ocean. So the cove opens up around this side. Of course, you could maybe build along the cliffs here as well, build some really cool and unique entrance to your ultimate hidden pirate cove. And this entrance over here, I mean, you might even be able to sail your ship right in, is over at these coordinates. So definitely a really cool option for a hidden pirate cove base. Definitely another highlight here of the Genesis Ocean biome is this really cool and unique island, perfect for the ultimate pirate base. It's actually a really big island by itself with plenty of space for building a really cool and uniquely shaped bay where you can kind of sail into the heart of the island, overlooked by this giant skeleton with waterfalls coming out of the ice, which of course is definitely the highlight of the island for me. So building on top of that, maybe like a cool fort or castle, could be a really awesome base location. But of course you could also be building down in the bay. You can kind of sail around in here, which is really cool, make a water pen in there, etc. But you can see it's a really cool, unique island. Definitely some high cliffs, which might not be the easiest thing to get around on, but definitely offers a very unique landscape. It's kind of like a natural wall border all around your island, and then a few different pathways leading up higher on top of the cliffs, which offer some amazing base building opportunities all around the top of them. Or maybe you want to stay a little bit lower to the ground and build something down here and have the awesome view of the skeleton right in front of you. There's definitely a few options here, and definitely a really cool, unique island to call home. If you want to build here, you can find it right over here on the map. Over here we have another beautiful island to build your bases at, and it's an island that's split down the middle. The one side is great if you want to build along the edge of the island like I've done over here. That way you can build some really cool harbors, or maybe even connect it up with ocean platforms and shipyards, and make your own kind of port that way, which works great with the Tides of Fortune skins. And you can get some really cool builds all along the beach. Really, it's quite a big area, but even some higher up areas as well, with some flat spaces where you could do some building if you want to maybe add some layers to your port town, and all that with a beautiful backdrop of the mountains behind you. So if you want to build right over here on the beach, you can do it here on the map. But this island is definitely big enough to feature more than one build location. As we move to the second half of the island, there's even more amazing spots to choose from, like these open clearings with the mountains and waterfalls in the background. But of course you can also move closer to the waterfalls. There's kind of pathways all around it. You can build on top of some of these cliffs, of course, to get some really cool, unique bases going. And even if you go all the way up here, there's some nice platforms and layers that you could utilize for your own base building, and even some kind of caves. Although again, there's resources in there, so you might want to keep those for resources so that you don't always have to rely on going somewhere else. But this island also features a nice cavern, kind of a cove that you could utilize as part of a base build project. You can see it kind of goes along the side here and then connects back up to the island. You've got beautiful waterfall landscapes coming down the side of the mountain, so it has a lot to offer and a lot of beautiful locations that you could build at, with nice ponds, waterfalls, caves, coves, etc. And of course, building all the way here at the top would be a very beautiful view of the entire island. So if you want to build over here, you can find it right here on the map. This desert island is definitely one of the more unique aesthetics that you could pick. It's got some nice tropical trees, and again, a definitely deserty biome, which offers you, of course, some desert spawns, including the elusive thyla. Usually there's about one of them spawning at a time, but can definitely be a very valuable tame on this map. And of course, it's kind of like a hand rising out of the earth, a giant grasping you. So it would be such a cool location to build right here in the middle, of course, in the palm of the hand, and build a really cool base. Maybe even get some things hanging down from the fingers. There's a lot of cool opportunities here for a truly unique base location on this pretty spectacular looking island, I must say. It's a really nice one with these land masses that we don't see that often. The rest, it's mostly just like a deserty biome with some nice cliffs and rocks poking out from it. Nice tropical vibes around the outside and plenty of interesting looking bays to integrate your shipyards and harbors in. But yeah, definitely building right here in the center would be my go-to. There's a nice flat area as the palm of the hand, which is perfect for your base in the hand of a giant. And if you're wondering where you can find this, it's right over here on the map. All the way at the top right of the map is a really unique deserty themed island with a giant dragon skeleton as the center of it. That's not the only unique thing though, because the island itself kind of follows a whirlpool pattern, making it a very cool and unique place to build. And I would know from first-hand experience, since this is where me and my tribe have been building our tribe base over on my community server. There's definitely a few options here to build, whether you want to build right at the front of the island here, a nice big harbor so that you have the awesome skeleton as a backdrop, or of course go right into the skeleton itself to utilize the space underneath as a really cool and unique base location that still lets in a little bit of light so you're not completely closed off from the outside. It's relatively shallow for most of this, so an easy place to build a nice shanty town on stilts. There's actually a surprisingly deep hole here with a bunch of resources for you to gather, which is a happy bonus, of course. And then surprisingly, and we only discovered this after we were here for way too long, there's even a whole cave hidden at the end, where again you've got a shallow pool that you could use for building in, which also has another entrance right here at the back of the island so that you have another point of access. So definitely an island that has a bunch of things to offer and a really unique setting, whether it's the dragon skeleton itself or the whirlpool shape of the island. It makes for a very cool and unique setting. So if you want to build here, it's the top right of the map. Up next is probably one of the biggest pre-built port location that will give you a ton of space to build a really cool base in one of these Spanish colonial forts. It offers you even a pre-built dock. I'm not sure if you would be able to fit an actual shipyard right inside of this. Turns out you can't, but you can place it right at the end of it, so you'd still kind of connect it, or at least you would be able to connect it up quite decently. Then it also has this cool cove underneath the main fort part itself that maybe can be used as some kind of water pen. It's not too deep, but for most creatures I think you could probably get away with it. But of course the main attraction is the giant fort with the whole layout for you to utilize. The docks over here being the main way to get up on the island and then slowly make your way around the fort with many different pre-built locations. Of course, you can't go into the buildings, unfortunately, but you have plenty of big locations to build at. This would already be a pretty big space for a base build, but then we have many areas like it. Like there's a lot of these platforms empty where you could be building. You have a giant courtyard, perfect for breeding, as long as you secure it, of course. And you can keep going. Like there's so much more. This would be a great place for a big tribe to call home, with the main fort here at the back, of course, for the best location overall. But yeah, there is a ton of space here, so if you want to build in one of these pre-built fort locations, this is probably the best one by far, just because of the sheer size of it. Unless of course you'd rather have something smaller, there's plenty of options for that too. If you want to build in this fort, you can find it right over here on the map. This is a pretty small and compact fort location. Well, it's still pretty sizable, but the fort itself is not too big. This whole island is pretty much the fort. There's nothing really else. but it has a lot of space for you to build. We have a beautiful docks here that you could probably utilize to get your shipyard pretty close, and then you right away start off with a beautiful empty area if you want to do some building of your own. All alongside the fort, we of course have plenty of these open locations that we can use for building, and there's some pathways underneath that you can follow, and in this case there's even a beautiful kind of cavern, perfect for your pirate to stash away all the treasure. So yeah, there's a really cool system here that goes all the way out to the side of the island, so definitely a really cool place. You've got of course the main fort here in the middle and some nice gardening areas around the side. So again, plenty of space to build. We have a dino pen, some secret passageways underneath, which is really cool. Makes it a very unique and definitely a very interesting location to do some cool building. If you want to build at this fort, you can find it right over here on the map. Here we have another island with a pre-built location for you to take over and turn into your own base, but also a decent amount of landmass around it if you want to be building your own creations next to that. In fact, it's an island split in two. There's a nice stream going right down the middle and even creating kind of an island in the middle for the fort to take place on. All of these islands actually have a ton of space for building. They're relatively flat areas, but without too much work, you could be building some pretty sizable bases here, breeding locations, etc., without too much effort. But of course, the main attraction is this nice fort in the middle, a bridge leading right up to it with a beautiful courtyard for you to take over and build your main base in. You have the walls all around the outside accessible as well, and then even a nice round bit here at the end, again, which you could easily turn into your own base creation. Yeah, so no matter what your plans are, if you want to take over this fort or you want to maybe just build somewhere else on the island, it definitely offers you enough space to easily build your base and not having to worry about running out of space. And one of the better forts for sure, especially for builders, because well, you've got a whole courtyard here to work with and build your own thing inside of it. So you can find this one right over here on the map. Here in the bog, there's actually a bunch of really cool build locations, and some of my favorites are actually here in the trees. There's a lot of these big trees, of course. They aren't necessarily the safest place. There is some big creepy spiders, of course, hanging out in most of them, but it offers for some really cool base building. As you can see, I already did a base build here in the tree, adding a cliff platform to the side, but there's enough other platforms, etc., to pick from. This tree in particular I quite like. That's why I build here, because well, not only we have a waterfall right next to our base, which we integrated into our build, there's an other waterfall right next door as well. Some pretty cool views here from this tree, as well as a nice area underneath the tree that you could easily turn into a dino pen that can house quite a few of your bigger creatures, so that you can easily do some breeding here and keep them relatively safe. So I would definitely say that this tree is a very good option to build your base at, and if you want to know where it's located, you can find it right over here on the map. This next spot is another really nice and cool location, and at first glance you might think it's just a little pond somewhere in the swamp, but this is actually a special one because it is high up in the trees, surrounded by the tall treetops. There is of course a few of these kind of platforms that you can build on, but this one in particular really like the look of it. It also has a nice waterfall going down from the side and plenty of little build areas around the edges of the lake. You can easily build like a little base on stilts here and have a pretty decent amount of space. You can see it goes back pretty much all the way up to the tree, so you have a ton of space easily available here. And as I said, there's definitely a few other of these platforms nearby that you could expand to should you need it. So definitely a really cool and valuable build location, which you can find right over here very centrally in the bog. This is another really beautiful location here in the bog with this beautiful little flower shining a light on two of these waterfalls coming down. And there's a few different options for a cool base. You could of course be building right here in the water so that you have the waterfalls and the plant as a nice backdrop. Build a really cool little swamp base here on stilts. I definitely think that would be a really cool build. And then you have the light of the flower as some natural light for your base itself. You could also choose to build on top of the waterfalls, of course. There's also a little pond that you could build stilts on, but also some flat areas right next to it, and plenty of big trees available, of course, that you could use for building against, even some with some more platforms around. So there's definitely a lot of options, but this little scene here with the waterfalls, with the flower shining light down, I think this area is one of my favorites down here. And definitely enough space here to build a pretty nice base. And if you're wondering where it's located, you can find it right here on the map. Another really beautiful location here in the bog is this tree right here. There's a bunch of these beautiful flowers shining a light around it. You've got a waterfall near here, so just building anywhere near here would be quite cool as a setting, whether you want to build against the tree or even here. There's a bit of like a flat area right here above the waterfall that you could definitely utilize, but the tree itself also has some really interesting place to offer, because it kind of has like a little bit of an almost cave system underneath it, a little bit of a canyon that you could build a really cool base in. Basically between the roots of the trees, build something on stilts right here. You have some nice points to take a look from, like you've got the waterfall flowing down here, the beautiful flowers here in the surrounding giving you some natural light, and again just some really cool views here in the heart of the bog. And I just think there's something quite magical about these locations which make it stand out from different maps, which yeah, it's definitely a really nice spot to build at. So definitely could see you do some really cool stuff here. If you want to know where this is located, it's right over here on the map. Maybe you want to live a little bit less central, away from everything. Around the edges of the bog, there's actually also some pretty nice areas that you could build in. This one offers quite some interesting place. There's definitely a decent amount of like flat space here in a little bit of a raised up area, so it's a bit safer than being down on the ground. And you also have one of these bigger trees here that has these big tree roots that you can go into and definitely utilize a part of this as part of your base or hideout, which is a lot easier to secure, of course. But again, you do have a decent amount of space out front where you could be building a base, and then you're away from the busyness of the rest of the map. It's still a pretty nice area with all the flora around you. And yeah, you could probably build something really cool hidden away by this big willow tree. If you're interested in building in this spot, you can find it right over here on the map. So over here in the bottom left of the map, we have a beautiful island, a pretty decent size, which offers a fair few good options for a good base build location. It has a natural teleport, which is of course always a good sign. It's got some really nice landscape with the mountains. It's got this beautiful waterfall flowing down that you could decide to build around or on top of, because you got some flatter area on top with a nice little lake and a natural land bridge leading you all the way to the other side of the island. If you want to live on the back of the island here, you've got a pretty natural bay here that you could be building along. You've got some nice landscapes all alongside the island. On the other side, you've got some shallows, so definitely be careful here with your ships. But again, you have some decent build options here too on the beaches, and even some smaller islands here out front where you could be building some pretty cool bases. So a ton of options on this island and some pretty nice and tropical landscaping that definitely fits the pirate vibes. If you want to build here, you can find it right over here on the map. And over here we have another beautiful tropical island, but a very unique one because you've got one of these, well, obelisk-like structures floating right above one half of it, which some people might like, some people might not. I guess it kind of depends on what you're planning on building, or if you just plan on ignoring it completely. But it is definitely a very nice island with a bunch of space available. In fact, you've got this smaller island right over here. If you just want to be overlooking it all, you've got this island with the mountainous landscape where, I mean, you could definitely be building this. Definitely a few good options here, but also some important resources that you probably want to keep so that you're not too reliant on having to go to other locations. And besides, I think this island is actually the main one for building. Whether you want to build down below in the cove and create your own little pirate cove right there, or you maybe want to build on top your own fort or castle overlooking everything and even having a beautiful waterfall flowing down from it. With the option to definitely do some really cool building here. You've got all the pathways around into this cove as well. There's a ton of different options depending on what kind of vibe and kind of style you want to go for, but a really beautiful island to work with. And if you want to build here, you can find it right over here on the map. The big central island in the middle of the ocean biome is probably the one where you have the most opportunity for building, just because of the sheer size of it, and it can definitely house quite a few different bases. There's also, of course, some good resources here, so it's definitely not a bad one to call home, especially since it's pretty much the middle of the map, so everything is kind of relatively nearby since it is a very big ocean. One of my favorite spots is here with these waterfalls flowing down, and they're not necessarily to go and build up on the mountain top because there is some really cool little coves up here, but again, there's also a lot of resources there that you probably want to keep safe. There's some really nice pathways crossing the waterfalls. So for example, building alongside these waterfalls anywhere would be really cool. And if you go a bit further down right over here, there's actually some decent flat space that would make it a lot easier to be building a base, and then you have the cool waterfalls up the mountain as a nice backdrop. So definitely a decent spot, I think, to call home with these streams slowly going down. Although of course you could also build all the way down at the beach, especially if you want easy access to your water tames as well as your ships. If you want to find where this is located, you can find it right over here on the map. And on the other side of the mountain here on the central island, there's another beautiful location. You've got, of course, the big mountain itself, but many waterfalls flowing down it on this side. You even have some kind of like cove-like area with some cool cliff formations that you could build underneath. And all of these waterfalls flowing down just make for a stunning backdrop of any base that you want to build. So whether you want to build down here, for example, on that little island, or maybe underneath these cliff structures, it would definitely make for a cool base. But even right next to this little lake, there's kind of a platform that would work very well to build on, where you're right next to some of the bigger waterfalls, and you have the pathways leading off to the different sections of the mountains, offering all sorts of resources for you to collect. So yeah, definitely this side also makes for a beautiful base with some pretty spectacular views of your surroundings on the side of the mountain. But of course, there's plenty of other places to build. Example, this little bay here would also be a great one to turn into your personal harbor. If you want to build over here, the coordinates are right here on the map. Up next is another really cool island with a bunch of space available, some different cliffs on the ends of the many kind of fingers of the island that could call for cool bases, a cool lighthouse, and you also have one of those modern structures, pre-built things already here on the island that you could of course integrate into your designs, or at least use as a nice focal point to find your way back home. It's got a nice tall mountain on one side, not necessarily great for building unless maybe you want to build like a tower on top of it, but it is a nice landmark and backdrop, and the main attraction I think is mostly the center here of the island. You've got some nice flat areas down below, also a little bit higher up, and then all the way over at the other side. So there's just a bunch of nice options here to build with a pretty nice surrounding for your base to get a really cool setting. If you're wondering where you can find this one, it's right over here on the map. Of course, there's also a beautiful snow biome with some really cool landscape. There's again a lot of mission areas here, but definitely some really cool build locations. This one is one of the coolest and most unique locations in my opinion. Is this big rock spike sticking out from the ground, covered with ice for most of it, and there's a few options on how to build a base here. First of all, of course, is right on top of the ice layer at the very top of it. You'd have a decent amount of space here. There's definitely a lot of space. The main issue, of course, would be getting up here. That would be the trickiest part of building all the way up on the ice, but you would definitely have a lot of space and some amazing views of your surroundings. If you think that's a little bit too tricky for you, you can also move down a layer and kind of build underneath that ice spike on this layer. It's not very flat, so you definitely have to do some of the leveling out your base yourself, but you could build something really cool on this layer between the two rock spikes, still get a pretty amazing views of your surrounding where there's a lot of these other spikes that you look out over, but of course you could pick any of these to build on. And the good thing is, on this layer there is actually some pathways kind of leading up to it, so it would be a lot easier to get your creatures up there. But again, it does make for a really cool and really unique build spot, so definitely one to keep in mind. And if you're interested in this one, you can find it right over here on the map. The next location is a bit more central, closer to that giant mountain overlooking you, and you even have a really cool view of the icy waterfall coming down from one side of it. It's this cliff that is a little bit higher up. You have some really good views of your surroundings, of course, and it offers a decent amount of space for you to build on, with a nice tactical location here that is pretty central to the whole snow biome. And of course, plenty of those lovely snow-covered trees all around you. And it does seem, at least when I've been visiting this, that it isn't too hostile here, with Thames spawning right on this location. Of course, ARK always likes to lure you in with a safe feeling and then it starts spawning things anyway. But yeah, it does look like it's a little bit more out of the way, and you are in a pretty cool spot with some nice views all around you. And if you want to build in this location, you can find it right over here on the map. There's a few of these metal-y tech structures in the snow biome, and they look pretty cool. And depending, of course, on what kind of style you want to build, you could definitely use this to your advantage. I can definitely see trying to build something against or underneath one of these pre-existing structures. For this example, if you build something right underneath it, you could incorporate this cool curved shape to the back of your building. Also save on a bunch of structures by not having to build the back of your base. But you could take that even a level further and integrate these different layers that are halfway up the structure into your base itself. You could make a kind of command room or bedroom right up in here, and then around the front you still have some extra area that you could also utilize to build on. So there's definitely a few ways to integrate this into a really cool and unique base design. And if you want to build in this one right over here, you can find it over here on the map. This spot offers you a pretty decently flat area where you can build your cool snow themed base right in the middle of the snow biome, with it looking like a pretty relaxed area with not too many hostile spawns, at least from the looks of it, and an area that is a little bit higher up so nothing would just keep wandering into your place. It offers some pretty stellar views of the mountain in the middle of the biome, and as you can see here, it is a pretty sizable platform. It is relatively flat, so building should be a lot easier. And again, you've got some amazing views, the mountain in the distance, and of course the nice snowy forest all around you. And as you can see, it looks like it's a pretty chill area. I think it's on the better side of the biome where not too many hostile things are spawning, which should make it a little bit easier for you to settle down here. But yeah, it is a pretty nice location. Again, the landscape kind of helps you keep it safe. There's really this ramp on the side, I think, where you can get up to it, so it isn't too hard to secure this location and build a really cool snow base. If you want to build in this location, you can find it right over here on the map. And if you want to live safely out of the way of most things, then this corner of the map might be a good spot for you. It's not the most flat area, so you need to be creative enough to work with that, but you do have, of course, again, an amazing view of the mountain in the distance, and you're pretty much all the way up in the corner of the map, which means that you're nicely away from all of the busyness of the center and the mission areas. Yeah, you got a pretty nice cliff here. Again, it's not too flat, so you definitely need to be able to work with that and incorporate that into your design, but you could definitely build something really cool on these cliffs overlooking the surrounding area. And of course, being on top of the cliff, it does offer you some extra safety. If you do not want to build on the cliff itself, there's also some areas behind it that are a little bit more flat and friendly for you to build on, and then you're definitely kind of hidden away in your own little paradise where you can barely even see the mountain itself. So depending on what your needs and preferences are, there's definitely some really nice building that you could be doing in this corner of the map. So if you want to build right here, you can find it right here in the left corner. This island in the bottom right corner of the map has a ton of potential. It's a pretty sizable island and offers some really cool pre-built locations that you can adjust to your own dream base. Right over here at the end of the island, we've got this giant cool fort with a decent amount of space still available on the inside, but you can actually do some building yourself, since I don't think you can access any of these buildings. You can access the insides of the walls, which is already a plus, which means you have a ton of space. But you can see you can totally build a big building here in the middle or use it as a breeding pen. You've got more space out here to be building a base. You even have a really cool shipwreck here in this bay, and of course even more space all around the sides of the forts. And that's just the port itself, because the island has actually a pretty nice landmass with a little mountain here on the inside. There's definitely also some building spaces available if you don't want to go for the forts. It's a pretty nice landscape. There is some hostile spawns here, of course. And then on the opposite side, there's actually another little pre-built spot with some nice flat ground for you to build at. So yeah, a lot of potential for this little island, but this is definitely the highlight right over here. So if you're interested in building here, you can find it right at the bottom right corner of the map. This small little island offers another really cool pre-built location for you to call home, but it also equally offers some really nice locations where you could be building your own base and have the rest of the pre-built structures as a pretty cool view. So the island itself, it's not too big, but definitely a decent size. And you've got these two relatively flat areas where it's kind of perfect to be building upon. So if you want to build your own base, definitely those options are there for you to take. But we also have a bunch of these pre-built locations with the ramps leading up. Again, of course, great location to build here. Some decent flat area where you could definitely build a proper base or like a breeding pen or whatever. Of course, the beaches themselves offer plenty of opportunities. And then you've got the main pre-built structure over here with, again, a decent amount of space here around the back, as well as in this courtyard where you could definitely build some of your own additions as well. So it really depends on what and where you want to build. Even the bridge, I guess you could turn into something really cool and unique. So definitely an interesting location, whether you want to be building in one of the pre-built locations or just enjoy the view of them from your own creation. This island you can find right over here on this side of the map. Then we have another deserty island with some tropical vibes around the beaches for you to maybe build a base. It's got a fort high up on the cliff that definitely makes for a great location to call home, with a cool bridge right in front of it connected to a watchtower. Again, unfortunately, the watchtower itself isn't accessible, but it does prove for a really nice backdrop. The bridge is also a really cool setting, but the main attraction, of course, is the fort with two big courtyards that you can easily turn into your own base and still do some decent building and have enough space for all of your different breeding projects, which of course is a great one. You definitely will have to secure it though, because you can see things will spawn inside of the fort, but as soon as it's secure, it will offer you a ton of space for all of those different breeding projects, for all the creatures you might need for the missions. The island itself's got some nice desert vibes, some pretty nice areas as well if you want to do some building maybe anywhere else on the island, but I feel like the fort is the clear winner here and the main location you probably want to call home. If you're interested in building here, you can find it right over here on the map. Then this island offers some really unique aesthetics. It's not a very big island and most of it is taken over by rocks and cliffs, but the fauna here, especially these spiky trees, provide it with a really unique look that you don't really see anywhere else in the ocean biome. So you could definitely build something really cool here, although you would have to be creative with the space available. But that's not necessarily a problem, because you can of course still build a decent looking base on the island itself, or expand it by using the shipyard and or ocean platforms to gain more ground that way, and then utilize the island more as maybe a backdrop. But I mean, that being said, this end of the island you can definitely turn into a decently sized base and utilize and embrace the aesthetics of the rest of the island and the cool fauna sticking out around you for your build project. But again, yeah, with ocean platforms, with shipyards, it's quite easy to get yourself some extra space if you need it for breeding projects, etc. If you want to build on this island, you can find it right over here on the map. Over here we have another really cool island with a massive bay that you can get into, that you could definitely utilize for your water tames, or of course sail your ships into the middle, and you can even actually build a shipyard right here, which would provide it with some added security from being more inland rather than out in the open ocean. There's some really cool pre-built things here as well. A little lighthouse, unfortunately can't actually access it, and also some of these little pre-built areas where you have kind of like docking areas and some little scenes created with a little bit of decoration here and there. So definitely cool to kind of feel like the island has already some established things. Got a really cool hanging bridge here as well, and some stairs here and there. So definitely some nice pre-built areas that you could integrate into your own base building plans. There's a decent amount of building space here, You got some cool skulls hidden in the landscape, which is always a nice feature. And then up here we have some bigger pre-built structures. Again, unfortunately, you can't actually go into them, but they provide an interesting backdrop for sure. You see, we have a bit of a bigger platform here on top of the waterfall. We have some nice water axes here too. And then the cliff kind of goes all the way back round. So there's definitely a few opportunities here. You could even build inside of this. There's a little like cave area that you could turn into your base if you want to, but it all kind of depends on what your plans are. But this island definitely offers some flexibility as to what you could do here. So if you want to build here, it's located right over here on the map. Of course, maybe the most unique biome here on Genesis, the lunar biome, offers definitely a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunity to build some really cool, unique bases out in space. And this rock kind of floating above the majority of the land masses could be a really nice place to build on. Again, you'll need to be creative. You need to use pillars to support your base, but you can make a nice little outpost here. There seems to be very few things that can actually spawn here, so you should be able to block those spawns off quite easily as soon as you start building here. And whether you want to build like a nice little spaceport, maybe some docking stations for your space wheels, this rock should offer you a pretty nice area and a relatively safe spot, since there's, well, nothing really that can spawn close to your base. If you want to build in this location, you can find it right over here on the map. Another beautiful piece of outer space land is definitely this one. It's a bit more hostile with, well, your typical lunar spawns, but it is a pretty cool area. It's a decently sized rock, actually. There's some purple glows, the orange plants, and of course, the typical lunar biome landscape, but you have some decent areas to work with. You have this central area, which is definitely a nice open space where you could be building in, or you could build alongside these canyons and maybe incorporate the unique rocky landscape of your surroundings into your base, as you do have a decent amount of space available on this rock to build with, and you're nicely out in a corner of the lunar biome, so you're out of the way of most of the missions. If you want to build right in this spot, you can find it over here. Another corner out here in space with a decent building location, and actually a really cool one. You've got these two craters right next to each other that I think would be an awesome location for a space outpost. Somehow incorporating these craters into your base design would be a really cool and unique spot. The advantage of this one, of course, is having a bit of shadow right here, which will make your survival early on a lot easier to manage, besides of course having the radiation fested sunny areas. But again, this rock offers actually a ton of space for you to build on. It is also in a corner of the map, so you're nicely out of the way, but it's got some nice unique landscape on the entirety of this rock that you could definitely utilize for a pretty cool base. But I just really liked these two craters, as you know, incorporating the clear lunar landscape into your base design. So yeah, if you're wanting to build over here, you can find it on the map in the bottom right of the Lunar. This is another smaller piece of land floating out in space that you could turn into your own space station. Again, there isn't a lot of things that spawn here at the same time, but there is Rexes that seem to spawn here. It's definitely not the safest location, but it is a nice small size rock that you could fully incorporate into your own cool space station, with plenty of space of all of your crafting and storage needs, as well as some docking spaces for your space whales or tech skiff. Yeah, you could definitely transform this rock into a really unique looking base. You're a little bit more central in the biome, so that's definitely also an advantage. And you're looking out over this really cool pre-existing piece of structure right next door, definitely giving some sci-fi vibes. And of course, just the glorious views over the lunar biome itself. If you want to build on this spot, you can find it right over here on the map. And of course, another really cool location is right near to this kind of obelisk kind of structure, which of course is already a really cool and unique setting, and especially here out of space, it kind of feels like a very fitting structure. But then around it is also a pretty nice looking place in general. There's definitely a few spots that would be cool to build in. You've got another crater here right next to this floating structure. So that's definitely, I think, a really cool setting for your own little space outpost where you can integrate the crater, the surrounding landscape, or even the floating structure in your design in some kind of way. But at least it will make for a really cool and unique location, and it's always going to be easy to find your way home. If you want to build over on this spot, you can find it right over here on the map. Over here we have an island with some nice pre-built structures that you could utilize as your own base. I especially like the courtyard over here where the trees are growing, because if you clear this out, you've got a pretty decent area where you can actually build something of your own, which, I mean, I am a builder, so I would prefer still building something of my own. And unfortunately, you can't actually go inside of any of these buildings for some reason. I don't think they've made any buildings accessible on any of these islands, which is a bit of a shame, because otherwise it would be an even better base location. But still, there is plenty of space with a cool backdrop of this pre-built fort. This one on this side is a little bit wonky, I'm not gonna lie. There's some pretty weird, like, floating fort action going on here, but that could be an invitation to you to build whatever should be underneath here to turn it into a functioning building, and kind of integrating your own build with the pre-built structures. Other than that, you've got some pretty nice beaches, you've got a beautiful little bay here to utilize as well, and just a beautiful looking place. Very tropical, and definitely a good option to build at. If you want to build on this island, you can find it right over here on the map. Here we got another little tropical island out at sea. This one offering a nice big cliff in the middle to get some higher ground. And other than that, some pretty interesting landscape. You got the cliff overhanging a little bit over some metal nodes. You probably don't want to build there and keep those spawning back for you. But you got some nice beaches around the outside. And the main place where I would be building, of course, is the cliff up here with some different layers that you could totally utilize for your build. But of course, the spot here at the top is probably the one where I do the main building. So you've got some nice views of your surroundings, and from here you can actually see a few neighboring islands, and you'll be able to see quite a few outposts spawn right around you. So yeah, if you're planning on doing some outposts, this could actually be a pretty decent location. And as you can see, there's actually quite a lot of space here, so you can definitely do a decent bit of building here on this nice tropical island. If you're looking for where to find this, it is right down here on the map. Another small little tropical island is this one over here. Again, nothing too major going on here. It's one of the smaller islands where you just have a nice tropical little island on your own, where there's a decent amount of building space. There's a little pond here that you could build around at. You have a pretty cool landscape, these cool new trees that they added with Genesis. But other than that, well, there's just not much going on here, but that's not bad if you just want a cool, nice place to build. This definitely offers it. You've got the nice beaches, you've got a little bit of a raised up cliff land where you can totally build something really cool, build your own little fort out in the ocean. And yeah, if you want to build here, find it right over here on the map. This next island is split right down the middle with a big stream kind of dividing it up into two separate islands, but also offering you another nice, unique tropical island that you could call home. Of course, there's more space here on the bigger one of the two islands where you've got some really cool forest. Again, they've got some of the newer trees that we've seen added here with Genesis. Some pretty cool landscape and some higher up areas, but there's some different areas to pick and choose from, whether you want to build up higher on top of the cliffs or maybe stick to the lower beaches instead. And then of course the second smaller island also offers a pretty nice setup. You got the lower beach area where you could be building on, or you could follow up higher alongside the cliff and build near the very end of it. Build your own little castle or fort right there for a really cool base. If you're wondering where you can find this island, it is located right over here on the map. Now, this is another really cool and unique island. It's a pretty big one, so there is definitely plenty of space for even multiple bases or different bases depending on what your own preferences are. You've got some beautiful beaches all around the island, of course. You've got some pretty nice flat areas right here along the inland with a nice view of the cliff in the middle, as well as a beautiful big waterfall flowing down. So there's already a bunch of options for building here along these sides of the island, but then we've also got the path slowly circling up the side of this cliff all the way to the very top. And I think some of the coolest options for building a base are definitely up here, going up a little bit higher. For example, here you could build something really cool overlooking the rest of the island and of course the ocean around you. And there's definitely some options as well to build here alongside the water, alongside the top of the waterfall, for some amazing views and some really cool builds. And if you're up for it, of course, you could always build right at the very top of the cliff, although you might want to keep that because there is some useful resources here for you to gather. So it kind of depends on your preferences and your priorities, but it's definitely a beautiful island with some really cool landscape and waterfalls on display. So if you call this island home, you can find it right over here on the map. Next up, another really nice and tropical island. The island itself might not be the biggest, but it definitely has a proper tropical Caribbean feeling to it and offers you a nice watchtower that is already pre-built. Unfortunately, you can't go inside of it, but it will still provide you with a pretty nice backdrop. Other than that, you've got a beautiful tropical island here, and you even have this shipwreck out front, which is another really cool, unique feature to this base to fit those pirate themes that the map definitely embraces. For the island itself, yeah, you have some options here to build anywhere along the beaches, of course, or add some ocean platforms to expand the area that you're working with. But here, even on the inland, you have some more spots that you could totally turn into your base, clear out a little bit of the tropical trees, and you have a decent amount of space here with, again, nice tropical vibes to embrace those pirate vibes. And yeah, especially having the shipwreck is actually quite cool to have if you're building some kind of maybe pirate themed base or harbor. Yeah, definitely a cool thing to already have pre-built on your island. If you want to build right here, you can find this location right over here on the map. And then over here we have a group of smaller islands, but definitely not to be underestimated because they do embrace the typical tropical island vibe. So it's definitely a good option to be building at, whether you want to be building something on one of these smaller islands, like for example my little shipwreck starter base that I made, or you maybe just want to use these islands for their setting, because even if you want to build on ocean platforms, it's quite beneficial to be close to a landmass because the waves will be slightly lower and might not cover your entire platform once a storm begins. But besides having a ton of little islands here, there's actually two really cool skulls here that are perfect as a backdrop, or even to integrate into a base, maybe build like a lighthouse on top of one, or other things. But yeah, as you can see, this is also where I built my pirate ocean platform base. So it's quite easy to use this as a reference point and then build close to it, because it will also help you with the amount of waves that you will have and the height of the waves. And this makes for a perfect backdrop with those cool pirate skulls. But yeah, even the islands themselves, there's definitely some building opportunities, whether you want to build on top of those skulls, maybe build like a lighthouse or watchtower there. There's definitely a decent amount of area here if you take some of these bigger islands, or of course you can build like a tropical resort on all of these small islands, connect them with little walkways and bridges, and turn it into something really cool and unique. Over here we have another beautiful tropical island with actually a decent amount of space. It is a very overgrown island, so if you're building here, you'll probably need to clear out some spaces, but there's definitely some good, decent spots that will fit a decently sized base, and you're fully enclosed by the tropical landscape, which definitely fits the pirate vibe, the tropical vibe, or even the Spanish colonial set, of course, that we got with the Tides of Fortune DLC. There's a ton of space all around the island, so you can kind of pick whatever you want. You could even build out on this little island to the side. As you can see, a decently sized tropical island here with a nice little bay going all the way inland, so you can have a pretty nice and unique location to build at, with some friendly tide pups swimming around. So again, definitely a really cool setting, and if you want to build here, you can find it right over here on the map. Up next is another beautiful island with some amazing opportunities to build a base, from the beaches or the little islands around the side to the higher cliffs more towards the center of the island. There's a bunch of base build opportunities to find here. As you can see, it's a decently sized island, so there's a lot of opportunity here. First of all, just this little one off the coast is actually a nice flat area that you could use to build on, although again there is some resources here that you might want to secure, and in that case it's also a benefit that it's so far out of the main island, because then it's almost guaranteed to keep respawning even if you start building your base. Of course, if you don't want to build on the outskirts, you probably want to go for the cliffs higher up here in the main part of the island, which would offer you some pretty decent surface level. Like, you've got a lot of space up here to be building a nice base with the view of the island all around you. So definitely a good opportunity here. It's also a relatively flat spot, which makes it, of course, easier for building your own base up here. And yeah, a nice little fort or castle would definitely fit there on this tropical island. If you want to know where to find this one, you can find it right over here on the map. Here out at sea, we have another one of the smaller islands, but definitely another really nice tropical looking one that could be easily turned into your base, or would be a great one to expand with ocean platforms to create more building space for your bigger base builds. It's a pretty nice and relatively peaceful island by the looks of it. There's mostly just birds flapping around, which, I mean, that's, I guess, just nice aesthetics. There's not a lot on this island. It's not very big. You could definitely get some really cool builds off, whether it's pirate themed building or maybe your tropical resort. There is a little bit of land for you to utilize, but this is definitely one of those locations where I think you can really expand it even more by placing down some ocean platforms and expanding your building location that way. But especially if you're playing on a server, this might be one of the ones that is still available for you to live at. If you want to build here, you can find it right over here on the map. Here in the Volcano biome, you definitely have a cool setting, but maybe not the most safest to build in. This location definitely offers you a little bit of security since you're kind of hidden underneath this cliff, which makes for a really cool setting with the glowing landscape really getting some eerie vibes in here. So you could build a really cool kind of hidden layer here, safely away from the influence of the volcano, but still in a really cool and dark setting, if that is the kind of thing that you're going for. There's no lava here per se, so it's not really a good place for your magmasaur breeding, but at least you get a pretty cool kind of cavey-like build location that you could totally do something really cool in. If you want to build here, you can find it in the top left of the volcano biome. Well, this is a great example of the nice ambience you can get whilst living in the volcano. It might be erupting, it might be faking you out, but a cool location to build a base at is definitely next to these lava falls coming down from the volcano itself. You have a pretty nice pool here that you could maybe utilize for some of your magmasaur breeding. You could actually build some kind of bridging structure here across the volcano, which definitely offers some cool vibes. I think you should be relatively safe here from the influence of the volcano itself. And then right next door, if you cut away this forest, you also have a decent amount of space to build a main base, hidden away, kind of protected by this cliff face there. So not only a very cool and evil looking location with all the lava flowing down around you, but hopefully, I think at least, it should be pretty safe from the volcano itself. And you can do the magmasaur breeding, which I think is probably the main reason to be building in this dangerous biome. If you want to build right over here on this location, you can find it here on the map. The next location is also in the looming shadow of the volcano, but again, I've tried to pick a spot that should be completely protected from the influence of the volcano because it's kind of hidden underneath this nice and pointy rock. There's actually a decent amount of space underneath this where you could totally be building a main base. You've got this cool lava river flowing down right next to you as kind of a way to your base, which can also be a little border of natural protection by burning anything that tries to come at your base. And you got a little bit of lava down below as well, which hopefully should be enough to do some breeding for your magmasaurs. And if you want to really build a cool and unique base, you could even pick this little island in the middle of the lava with all of these cool spiky structures and maybe build your own evil tower right on top of it as a very cool and unique base. But yeah, again, good to have a decent amount of space, safe from the influence of the volcano itself, and still incorporating all of the cool things from this biome, like the lava, like the spiky trees, etc. So if you want to build over here, you can find it right here on the map. The next spot offers a few options for if you want to be close to the lava for some magmasaur breeding. We're kind of on a secondary hill next to the volcano, which again provides some natural landscape as protection for any fallout, although I'm not even sure that it would get this far anyway. Yeah, you could build right on top of these rocks, integrate some kind of breeding pen for your magmasaurs, or just build along this pathway that kind of goes around the entire place. But besides having this top layer where you could maybe integrate a base design, you can also go further down the lava and you again have a pretty big area where there's some really cool locations. For example, here along the side, there's a bit more flat area here where you could be building on, and you have a pretty big lava lake here for your magmasaur. So there's definitely plenty of evil looking lava. There's also, of course, some magmasaurs that seem to spawn down in these lower regions. But yeah, there is definitely some really cool settings here with the lava falls, with the big lava lakes, and some decent areas. This in particular is a pretty nice and flat spot, which you can find right here. But yeah, you can kind of pick and choose what you like. I think this might be the cooler one with the lava falls flowing down and everything, and a bit more flat area right next to it. but again, there's definitely also a decent amount of space available right up here for your magmasaurs. So right here on the map is where you can find these lakes. And finally, very far away from the volcano itself, should be well out of its reach, there is these lava streams coming down to this valley with a bunch of little islands in the middle. Again, this offers a lot of natural protection by things just walking into the lava and burning up, but any of these islands really are a pretty good option for an outpost. If you want to live right into the lava, maybe build your evil castle, your evil tower, whatever you've got planned, this would definitely be one of the coolest locations you could be building in, with the volcano right up in the distance, lava falls flowing down the hillsides, and this lava lake all around you for a pretty awesome spot to build on. There's again a lot of different islands here to kind of pick from where you could be building on, depending on what your exact base building plans are. You will definitely have a ton of space here and a really cool view from here. So if you're wondering where this is located, you can find it right over here on the map. There we go. Those are 50 of my favorite base build locations here on Genesis Part 1 in all of the different biomes. If you found another really cool spot to build at, please let me know down in the comments. And of course, if you've got any specific locations or builds you'd like to see me do on Genesis, let me know in the comments as well. As always, if you enjoyed seeing this video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you again in the next video or the next stream. For now, goodbye.